What happens when you take a relaxing bayou boat tour in Louisiana, only to discover that the apex predator lurking in the murky waters isn't an alligator, but a 3-ton, bloodthirsty hippopotamus? In the 2026 survival horror film Hungry, a serene vacation turns into an absolute bloodbath when a group of unsuspecting tourists find themselves trapped in a terrifying fight for survival against one of the deadliest mammals on Earth. The movie opens by introducing us to Sistine, a young woman desperately needing a break from her stressful life, dealing with a recent job loss and her mother's severe illness. Seeking a distraction, Sistine and her best friend Hannah decide to book a discounted alligator-watching riverboat tour in the Louisiana swamplands. At the docks, they meet the rest of their tour group, a divorced businesswoman named Dion, a nurse named Sally, Sally's retired firefighter father Tim, and her teenage son Mikey. They're greeted by the charismatic tour guide Rodrigo and his boss Walker, who casually mentions a fascinating piece of local history. Decades ago, international traders actually attempted to introduce hippopotamuses to the southern bayous. The tourists lap it off as a quirky fun fact, completely unaware that this historical footnote is about to become their worst nightmare. Rodrigo steers a flatboat away from the docks, taking the group deep into the beautiful but isolated labyrinth of the Louisiana swamp. As the boat ventures further off the beaten path, the atmosphere takes a dark turn. The vibrant, noisy swampland suddenly becomes dead silent. The tourists notice a complete absence of birds, insects, and typical wildlife. The reason for this eerie quiet is soon revealed when the boat bumps into a horrific sight: the savagely mutilated carcass of Big Ben, an enormous famous local alligator. The tourists are immediately thrown into a panic, wondering what kind of monster could effortlessly tear a massive gator apart. Before Rodrigo can turn the boat around, the water beneath them erupts. Without warning, a colossal, battle-scarred adult hippopotamus breaches the water surface and viciously rams the riverboat. The sheer force of the impact instantly capsizes the vessel, plunging everyone into the murky, algae-covered water. Total chaos ensues as the terrified tourists scramble for their lives. Diane manages to swim to a nearby cypress tree and pulls herself up while Sistine, Hannah, Tim, Sally, and Mikey desperately climb onto the overturned, slivery hull of the boat. Rodrigo isn't as lucky. The hippo's massive tusk grazes his leg, leaving him with a horrifying, deep laceration, before he barely escapes onto the hull. Sistine, showing quick thinking, dives back into the treacherous water for a few terrifying seconds to retrieve a floating emergency first aid kit. Sally, using her nursing skills, bandages Rodrigo's leg, but delivers a grim diagnosis. The swamp water is heavily contaminated, and without immediate hospital care, the infection will kill him. As the sun sets, plunging the bayou into pitch-black darkness, the nightmare escalates. The hippo proves to be highly territorial and refuses to leave, silently circling the group by the capsized boat. The tension reaches a boiling point when the beast suddenly surges from the dark water and grabs Tim. Despite Sally's agonizing screams, the hippo drags the retired firefighter beneath the surface, killing him instantly. Only moments later, the hippo strikes again, crashing against the hull and knocking Hannah into the water. In a heartbreaking and shocking sequence, Sistine is forced to watch helplessly as her best friend is brutally pulled under the duckweed. The surviving group is left traumatized, shivering, and completely paralyzed by fear, realizing they're being hunted by an apex predator with superhuman endurance and speed. Knowing they won't survive the night on the sinking hull, the survivors formulate a desperate plan. They decide to siphon the boat's remaining gasoline and ignite a ring of fire on the water surface to keep the hippo at bay just long enough for Sistine to swim to the submerged cabin and retrieve the emergency locator beacon. The tense underwater sequence is incredibly claustrophobic, but Sistine successfully grabs the beacon and resurfaces. A severely weakened Rodrigo manages to activate the distress signal, but the infected wound proves too much for his body. In a tragic and emotional moment, the brave tour guide succumbs to his injuries, leaving the remoting tourists without their swamp expert. Miles away, Walker realizes his tour boat is hours overdue and sets out into the dark bayou in a small motorboat to track the activated distress beacon. When Walker finally arrives at the wreckage, a momentary wave of relief washes over the survivors, but it is immediately shattered. As Mikey attempts to jump from the slippery hull into Walker's boat, he loses his footing and falls into the water. Before anyone can react, the hippo lunges from the shadows and kills the teenager. Enraged and defensive, the hippo turns his attention to Walker's motorboat, biting the engine and Walker's foot. Sistine quickly realizes they need a distraction. She convinces a reluctant Diane to help her thrash tree branches in the water on the opposite side of the wreckage, drawing the hippo's attention away long enough for Walker to fend off the beast with a blinding flare and pull his boat to the riverbank. With Walker's boat completely out of gas and severely damaged, Sistine, Diane, and an injured Walker are forced to manually row through the shallow marsh to seek shelter. They stumble upon an abandoned, overgrown facility, which Walker identifies as an old alligator farm. However, as they explore the decaying metal enclosures, they make a terrifying discovery. The facility wasn't just farming games, it was an illegal breeding ground for hippopotamuses, housing generations of the invasive species. The group's dread deepens when they hear a distress call nearby and find a baby hippo trapped underneath a heavy collapsed metal fence. The pieces finally click together. The adult hippo wasn't just being territorial, she was a fiercely protective mother slaughtering anyone who came near her trapped calf. Before they can process this revelation, the furious mother hippo crashes through the facility's gates. She zeroes in on Walker, instantly trampling him to death under her massive weight and a gruesome, bone-crushing display of power. Panicking, Diane attempts to scramble down a rusted iron ladder to escape, but she slips, plummeting to the concrete floor below and severely breaking her leg. Sistine, proving her ultimate resilience, grabs a canister of lighter fluid and ignites a massive fire near the entrance to trap the adult hippo, then bravely climbs down to pull Diane to safety. However, the resilient beast bursts right through the flames. In a truly shocking and brutal climax, the hippo corners Diane and mercilessly rams her against the metal cages, killing the businesswoman instantly. Now the sole survivor, Sistine is cornered by the blood-soaked, aggressive mother hippo. But instead of fighting back or running, she realizes that the animal's rampage is driven entirely by maternal instinct. In a tense, heart-stopping moment, Sistine slowly backs away from the adult hippo and uses a metal pipe to pry the heavy fencing off the trapped baby hippo. As the cat scrambles out and reunites with his mother, the atmosphere instantly shifts. The adult hippo seizes her relentless assault, giving Sistine one final imposing look before guiding her baby back into the dark swamp waters. Just as Sistine collapses from exhaustion, the loud thumping of a rescue helicopter echoes from above. The crew had spotted the massive fire she started earlier. Sistine is airlifted out the bayou, forever changed by the carnage she witnessed. Ultimately, Hungry is a brutal reminder of the raw, unpredictable power of nature, leaving viewers with a chilling lesson. When a mother's offspring is threatened, mankind instantly stops being an apex predator and becomes nothing more than prey.